Coming up today on Locked On at Texas Tech, the Red Raiders through Hawkeyes. See Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year with the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you. Once again, happy NCAA Tournament Eve. If you're tipping off on Friday, depending upon who you're rooting for, it's an Eve. But for us, tomorrow, we are getting down to business. 9:10-ish tip-off for the Red Raiders and the Seahawks of UNCW. It is all due respect week for UNCW on this program, so we're going to kick off our conversation today talking Seahawks. I want to get into a couple of different things with you, Chris. In just a minute, I want to get into maybe some ways that they might compare or contrast to some of what we saw in the Big 12 conference this year. I do want to step out of this hoops conversation for a moment before we're done as well to get your thoughts on this story this week, wondering if it's got your attention as far as the Big 12 conference and a football playoff is concerned. We were talking a lot about postseason play yesterday and maybe expansion or whatever it might be in the future that could hold for the basketball variety, but some tinkering going on with the football variety as well. And there's a story regarding what the Big 12 is pushing for this week that I wanted to get some thoughts from you on. But to kick off the conversation, let's actually take a listen to UNCW head coach Takeo Siddle, who is visiting with Mike Vaccaro, radio man for Seahawks basketball, and giving us a perspective on the Red Raiders from their point of view.
Two teams scoring in the 80s, two of the best offensive teams, but is there still a hint of defense for both these teams?
Oh, yeah. Man, when you talk about Grant McCaslin, coach team, you have to, talk about them when you talk about Houston and how physical and how competitive and how tough they are. That's what they're built on. And our guys need to understand that, Mike. It's going to be a UFC fight the whole way through. And so got a lot of respect for him. One of the game's best there is. He's done an unbelievable job at every stop that he's had. He's built off of toughness and just grit and grind. So we got a tall task in front of us, but we're going to go in there and prepare to win. And we're going to scrap and claw, bite, do whatever we have to do to try to come out of there with a win.
Yeah, 25-8 for the Red Raiders this season. JT Toppin, the player of the year in the Big 12, the newcomer of the year as well, a transfer from New Mexico. Is that kind of where it starts for you defensively to try to contain him?
Yeah, we have to do that by committee, but it's a team that they are really good in transition, very efficient, and then in the half court, a lot of pick and rolls. Our pick and roll defense has to show up, and then they're really good at going to the glass. So we're gonna have to rebound the basketball at a high level, and then offensively for us, they're so physical. When you think about them, think about the likes of Townsend on steroids. They're extremely physical. They contest everything. Everything's gonna be challenged, and they try to make you beat them from over the top. But they're very sound on both ends of the floor, and I think this will be a team, going into it before we play them. I bet a lot of people picked them to be in the Final Four, or a team that has a chance to win it. Hopefully we can stop that.
Some interesting thoughts there, Chris, on their approach. And also in that conversation, they talked about some familiarity within the matchup as far as the head coaches go. Actually, I think it was at North Texas where these two had collided previously.
Yeah, and I think the score of that game was 55-51, which was won by Coach Siddle and his Seahawks over Grant's team. And that's kind of what they were laying out there, is that those two teams were very defensive minded, kind of grinded out. These two teams now, these versions of Texas Tech and Wilmington, they score quite a bit more on average, close to 80 points a game, and a lot more, offensive flow and those kinds of things. But I do think I do like that Grant has firsthand knowledge here of what this coach is about, and it's just a matter of, do his kids listen to what he says when he tells them, hey, you better roll your sleeves up? Because the thing about Coach Siddle is he worked under Kevin Keats for, as we've touched on the, I guess it was yesterday's show, who was the NC State head coach, just got let go, but that's who kind of beat you last year. And I think that Keats's teams have always been known to have physical guards. They want to hammer you on the glass and kind of get into because you hear a lot of the words that Coach Siddle's using like there that Grant uses, grit and toughness and all that kind of stuff. But the thing about this UNC Wilmington team is that they're the way that they want to beat you is a bit different than the way you want to beat teams. And what I mean by that is their MO is going to be, they're not going to heavily rely on the three. I think they use it as a weapon, and some games they make a few more than others, but it's not really who they are. They want to get a shot up and then go get it. They really pride themselves on rebounding and then second chance opportunities and getting you on your heels and then getting to the free throw line. I mean, they make quite a few free throws a game on average, and that's kind of how they initiate offense. So, if you want to, we'll get into some personnel in a little bit, but some similarities to that. I don't know if it sounds like anything you've seen in the Big 12, but this is kind of what Arizona wants to do. It's kind of what Iowa State wants to do. I mean, they're not, that they want to really guard you and then just kind of be more physical than you are and then beat you up on the glass and then initiate offense that way by getting to the free throw line or some putbacks and things like that if they're not shooting it particularly well. What's crazy about this is a mid-major team. Their starting guard is going to be a problem. He's their best player, Donovan Newby. He's 6'1". Everybody else in their rotation is 6'5" or taller. I mean, they've got 6'7", 6'7", and 6'9" would be the three guys that come off the bench. So it's going to be a long team. It's easy to see why they out-rebound teams just because science. And I think you're good at what you emphasize, and they emphasize rebounding and crashing the glass, especially on the offensive end, and that's kind of their MO a bit.
Did you say 55-51, and that was in a full 40-minute game? We played the entirety of both halves, and it was 55-51. I mean, defense to say the least. NCAA tournament-wise, do you think that sometimes things tend to kind of clamp down a little bit more and trend towards lower scoring, or does it get looser and maybe you get more buckets? Is it just case by case, or do you think there are some trends that you've seen over the years?
There are clearly exceptions, but I think generally speaking, it's a lower scoring game. Yeah, it's more of a grinded out. It's more spaced out. The media timeouts are longer. They don't call as many fouls, which would be good for you in this case because maybe that hammers Wilmington's ability to initiate offense as much as they normally do. But and you just don't know how teams will show up at a neutral site and how well they'll shoot it, being unfamiliar with their surroundings and things like that. But I think that's typically the way these games go, or a lot of times that they go. And you'll see plenty of games that get into the 90s and 80s too, like mixed in there. But I think generally speaking, it does clamp down a bit more. And so the game slows down a bit more, and you must be able to operate in the half court. You don't necessarily get as many transition opportunities. That all funnels into maybe games being a bit more lower scoring on average. And that's why I think they're used to, operating this way. They kind of play at a slower pace. I think you would prefer to get out and run and be it more of an up and down game. And they want to, like I said, they want to get a shot up on the glass, and no shot necessarily is bad, but let's go get it and then create another opportunity for ourselves. And maybe we pick up a foul and maybe we get a putback, whatever. Whereas what you heard Coach Siddle say, when you get into the half court, you're very pick and roll oriented, and which is the easiest play to learn and the most difficult thing in basketball to try to defend. It just puts you in conflict. And one step here, one glance there, and it's curtains if you're not on the same page. And depending on what players you have involved in said pick and roll, are you going under this? Like with ball screens, you going under it? You hedging the whatever? Are you playing him the roller to pop out? Are you playing him just to roll all the time? And like. You've got guys that are really good at running this, obviously JT, and then obviously Elijah and Christian Anderson and some of these different options you've got. So, and you're looking for them to make a mistake, but then it comes down to, okay, we just got a shot that we wanted, and can you knock it down? That's just kind of what it comes down to. But they play a style that leads to, and it makes sense what we told you yesterday, it makes sense that a lot of their tournament games have been fairly close. This is a style that leads to keeping themselves within striking distance and whatnot. So because they want to slow it down, they're comfortable in this pace. And again, I think at any time you on a miss, you're going to try to get out and run. Anytime you get a steal or a turnover, a live ball turnover, you want to get out and run. You want to try to because you're deadly there. So that, but you want to talk personnel?
Well, I just wanted to ask you, as you're on that subject. Okay. I'm thinking about this week, guys we could least afford to have like a rough week or a rough March or whatever. And so I go through this list and I'm like, yeah, really need JT Toppin to play well. Really need Darion Williams. Really need Chance McMillan. Then I'm thinking, okay, I'm just naming everybody. So it's a tough exercise. But as you're describing what you're pointing to there, some of the things that this tournament or this setting can call for in the half court game, and maybe something less transition wise, maybe not, I don't know. But hypothetically, if there is something less available there, Elijah Hawkins is pretty high on the list of guys that we've got to have play well, because that just all sounds like, and I guess we could add Christian Anderson to that as well in that sense, because that sounds like a lot of things that you're really hoping you've got some maturity there for, and some kind of even keeledness that comes with that maturity, therefore, because these lights, can shrink a lesser man, Chris. I don't know if I'd be built for it, but these moments can really have an impact when things slow down and it gets a little bit more deliberate. So I was just thinking about Elijah Hawkins, and I would add C4 to that as well. Going to be really high on the list that are incredibly important.
We didn't talk about this. This is the first time I've heard you kind of approach this kind of question or topic aloud. Had you said who do you need to play well, or who's maybe one of your most important, if not the most important?
First, today's episode brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time, and with Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and a whole lot more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Plus, it's fast and easy. You can post a job free and simply, and within a day, multiple qualified candidates are there to choose from. So visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's at UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Today's episode brought to you by Fabric. Life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. And that's why securing their future is so important. And now Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family's needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You could be covered in under 10 minutes. And in many cases, no health exam is required. You can get $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. So protecting your loved ones doesn't have to break the bank. And it goes beyond just life insurance. Fabric also offers free digital wills and access to investment accounts to help your plan for your children's future. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions.
Two things. The beauty of your team is that you're not solely reliant on just the one guy. It's been a different guy or set of guys each time. That's the beauty of how efficient your team is and why the metrics love what you've been able to do and all that. But I would tell you that I think Elijah Hawkins will be one of the most important guys, if not the most important, throughout this next stretch.
Yeah.
I just he needs to stay out of foul trouble. I think as long as he scores some, he's a problem. He's scrappy and he'll be ready for any kind of fight that you want to throw at him. And I think he's just gotten better and better. And he's so good with managing and maneuvering this team in a half court basis, but also on the break. And I like it when, and Christian is as important, but I like it when they're able to play together because it allows Christian to do some different things off the ball on occasion. But Elijah Hawkins is going to be a huge X factor for you. And what do we talk about back in October and November? March is about guards, man. It just is. And as much as JT can carry you or score and rebound and all that, and like you're wondering about Darion and Chance, who I think are going to play. Again, it's just a matter of what level. As Grant has said, Elijah Hawkins is a big time factor into this. And it will be regardless of matchup. This is going to be more of maybe a slower type of game, more of a physical game. Missouri may want to, get out and run. Drake is going to want to slow it down and play at a screeching halt. But Elijah Hawkins fits in all of those things, and he would be a key factor in every bit of it on both ends of the floor because he's a pest on defense, and we know what kind of dime dropper he is, just setting his guys up, whether it's in the half court off the pick and roll or in transition.
No doubt. And I have to agree, and I just hope, again, knocking on wood, that this continues. But when you mention the different ways in which Tech has been able to find wins, man, that's something that's really encouraging in that you don't, we hope, have to be so reliable on one main event. And if the show's not rolling, then, hey, the show's canceled, grand opening, grand closing, see you next year. But you've kind of gone through some of those types of trials this regular season, and hopefully that'll benefit you as you roll through postseason play. And, hey, maybe we're just saving it up for this time of year where everybody just shows up at the same time, because that'd be nice too. That's kind of the one trial that we hadn't put ourselves through so far this season. Everybody feeling good, clicking all at the same time. So who knows what March could hold. We got one more sleep. Depending upon when you're consuming this, I suppose. If you're a Matador mobster, maybe 2 sleep and a half. I don't know. Do the mobsters sleep? I'm not even sure about that, actually. Sometimes when I check it in the morning, I'm thinking, you guys got to get to bed at some point. Anyway, we'll get back, obviously, to Red Raiders and Seahawks.
Well, and can we get into like 2 guys for them before we
Please
get into college
football
more stuff? Yes. So just for people that will watch this game or are unfamiliar, I've talked to plenty of people that have coached against this team and program and people that have covered them this year and everything. The biggest problem you'll have is their point guard and Donovan Newby. He's the guy that's going to take the most threes. He gets into the lane, draws a lot of fouls. I think that there's occasion where he'll flop and all that stuff. And so we'll see, but he's just the Chicago kid. So he's the kind of the head of the snake, if you will. The other player, because I've had a lot of people, man, they got a big 7-footer, the one that's from Kansas and all that. I'm told by a variety of people, it's Jamari Griffin that comes off the bench, who's 6'9", 210, very similar to the way JT plays it, and that he's kind of their version of that. He's one of their leading scorers, leading rebounders, even though he's their six-man type player. But that's the other scary matchup for you, is that he's just kind of relentless on the glass. He's a bit undersized in some ways, but he's just bouncy and he causes lots of problems. So just remember that name, Jamari Griffin, coming off the bench is the 6'9" player, but then Donovan Newby, their point guard, that's kind of the table setter and their head of the snake, if you will. So those would be the two guys that we'd be focused on most from a Texas Tech defensive standpoint.
All right, we'll return to the topic for a game day edition on tomorrow's episode, and then it gets really real, 9:10 approximately, Thursday night from Wichita, Kansas. Before we get out of here, Chris, I want to go back to postseason considerations, but of a different variety. First, today's episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all the money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it can be easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. You're going to love the all-in-one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money today. Use our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com and our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for half off your first year. We spent time on the last episode talking about some of the moaning and groaning as a result of selections or not for this NCAA basketball tournament, and what that could say about maybe what the tournament should look like in the future. Catch that episode if you have missed that one. But I want to take it to the category of college football, because this is also a postseason format that is remaining very fluid as we sit here, Chris, and maybe continue to sit that way for quite some time. And I was wondering about this comment that was made this week and now has gotten some attention, if it was on your radar, from, I believe it was Texas Christian Athletics Director Mike Buddy, no buddy of mine, who said earlier in the week that essentially the Big 12's athletics directors are, quote, adamant that it should be one automatic qualifying bid per league. You might remember not too long ago, you were seeing some things out there and reported upon as far as auto bids were concerned, to the tune of 4, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in the way of SEC and Big 10 qualifiers, 2 for the ACC and the Big 12. You'd have some at-larges and Group of 5 consideration as well. But I thought that was really interesting and kind of firm language, but it all could be for naught, of course, because you've got to get SEC, Big 10, and other leadership to agree to this kind of thing, Chris, and that seems like a long road to hoe, to borrow a phrase. But I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. What'd you make of this?
So you're still locked into your current setup this coming fall. You will have the one automatic qualifier. It's a 12-team playoff, all those things. I think there had been some discussion in the immediacy of this particular year, the way it was seeded, who gets the bye, all those things. I think that your mark had been on record as saying, I'm not willing to look at giving up a bye, because it's an automatic, I think, $4 million prize into your league coffers. And I don't think he's like, well, yeah, man, that's fine. You guys just take that $4 million and reseed it. Because, you know, if you reseed it, odds are your champ more often than not is not going to be the beneficiary of what Arizona State got going for them last year. So that's in the immediate, but you're right. There's a lot of meetings and conversations going on about what this is going to look like big picture. Are we going to expand to 14 or 16? And I think it's more than likely to grow. Shocker. I think that when these ideas were floated, 14 and 16, it came with certain models. The 4-4-2-2-1-1 model is the most prominent one, which I think I think that's the 14-team one, that basically 4 automatic, to each of the Big Ten and the SEC, 2 for the ACC and the Big 12, and then 1 to the Group of 5, and then 1 more additional at-large bid. And I think that the Big 12 is saying we just don't – we're not willing to just like say, hey, sure, man, like y'all design this the way you want it. We just think that one per league and then figure out the rest. And I don't know if this is political, if this is like trying to make your voice known and heard publicly, because the 4 automatic qualifiers has gotten a lot of pushback from the national media with the Big Ten and the SEC trying to ramrod this deal. And so we're clear, after this year, the commissioners of the Big Ten and the SEC, they will large in part get to do what they want. Everybody else kind of like acquiesced and was like, yeah, I mean, you're not going to really have much say so or a voting share anymore. Those 2 get to decide the future of this deal, which is a scary proposition. And so, because some ways you'll be like, okay, you're all in unison on 1 automatic bid, and I think it's a public outcry or like basically shaming these other 2 leagues and saying, what do you need to grease the wheel for, like on all these things? But you also could be screwing yourself out of a second automatic spot in the deal, because if you potentially just say, hey, 4 automatics by each league champ, everything else is at large, there's a lot of thought that you probably won't benefit there. In getting, they may be looking for reasons to include extra Big Ten and SEC teams and whatnot. So I don't know. I don't know how this plays out. I think that these 2 folks that are in charge of these 2 power leagues have heard a lot of the outcry. At the end of the day, do they just do what they want? Do they try to somewhat come up with something fair? I don't know, but I do find it interesting that, because I think you're just basically saying, we're not going to sit here and admit we're unequal to you. Like, we're not going to bow down that you're twice as much as we are, whether you are or you aren't. I just don't. I think they're going to maintain that standing.
You can say that. It's not reality, but you can say that. I think that for me personally, it kind of depends on how big the landscape is as to what I'm willing to kind of acquiesce to and agree to. If we're talking 16 teams, if we're talking like double XL size field, then I'm probably more into the 4-2 type automatic qualifying breakdown. There are clearly differences between those 2 leagues and the Big 12 and the ACC. I got no beef. Obviously acknowledging that it's not even like it's difficult to do or something that's difficult to discover. It's out there for everybody. And I think compromises typically represent the path to some progress. So that would represent some type of compromise, because believe me, I'm sure the Big Ten and the SEC is thinking, hey, we'd love to jam 6 or 7 in here, maybe a year or 2. So the one automatic qualifying bid aspect, I'm not so sure about, but I do think maybe in a smaller field, I'd want to push maybe a little bit more adamantly toward that. But at the end of the day, Chris, we didn't make it up. This thing's been around for a while, because it's true. If you got the gold, you're making the rules, and they got the gold. And so I don't think that they're interested in fairness, number one, because I don't think fairness personally exists. I feel like generating revenue, the most revenue for its member institutions, is priority number 1. And why would it not be? That's what they're there for. They're not some like stewards, in my opinion, of everybody else's college sports experience. But I do at the same time think it'd be very stupid to alienate roughly 55 to 60% of America's college sports public. I think they also know that. So again, where are we? Well, we're back to the land of compromise. Like, okay, I do think we actually have to not alienate that large of a percentage by just doing what we want and running wild. We do also still have Rutgers and Vanderbilt in our leagues, guys. So something to consider as well. But at the same time, I'm not like, buying into some thought of, well, they're going to do it in the interest of sportsmanship or fairness or whatever. I don't even know what people are saying that's a little more sentimental about it than I am. I think it's all in the interest of cash. And I guess I'm not going to begrudge them that for that, Chris, but I do think it's incredibly stupid to run the route or run the risk of alienating that large of a percentage of people who make this whole thing go. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we feed the machine. We feed the machine out here also. They feed the machine in other Big 12 or ACC locales also. So I think at the end of the day, there will be some type of, let me not say happy medium. There will be a medium. There'll be a tolerable medium, maybe for all involved. But I wonder, do you share any feelings along the lines of the size of the tournament mattering to you as it relates to the auto bid aspect, like what I'm describing? Because for some reason, I don't know, I feel a little bit different if it really grows to a much larger size compared to, say, a smaller field. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because what you're running the risk of is like, the fourth or fifth best SEC team. It's like you're talking about like a potentially like a 8-4 or 9-3 Ole Miss team. Just throwing that out there.
True.
Getting in over like a 10 or 11 win, Big 12 team, and I think that would potentially happen if. Mm-hmm. If given the opportunity, and they're going to say, just like the Big 12 tournament, the NCAA tournament right now, it's like, well, this record in this league is just a lot better than that record in that league, because look who they were having to play against and all that stuff. And so
think about the absurdity of their arguments they were kicking out this time around, and still how loud they got, how loud Lane Kiffin was. Don't lose to Kentucky at home.
Yeah. Arguments. And I don't disagree. I don't disagree. Yeah, I don't disagree. So this will play out in the coming weeks, I think, and I think you'll get some clarification, because you're only locked into this year's scenario. After that, the Big Ten and the SEC are largely calling the shots, and that's why I think that some national media members felt so strongly about speaking up and just saying, this isn't right. Like, why do you feel the need to have to do this? And then you've got the Big 12 folks in unity saying, this isn't what we're asking for or signing up for. That let's just keep it similar to how the NCAA tournament is. And like, you're automatic, if you win the championship, you get in. You don't have to grease the wheel and include. Nobody made these leagues have to expand and bloat themselves up. This was all they're doing. So sorry, you can't feed all the mouths and all. I think that's just what some of the argument is too. It's like nobody asked for this, man. This is kind of your fault, your problem.
Do you think that sounds more like they would be making this move out of like desperation because they can't feed everybody? I just still think it's the early plays of gaining the most that they can.
Well,
like, why would you not go for it?
All the above. Yeah. All the
True.
above. Yeah. All the above. Yeah. All the above. But at the end of the day, and I come at this from like a Texas Tech standpoint. Obviously, we're talking about the playoff. You've never even reached the Big 12 title game, to which you need to eventually crack the code there, and then this may matter more like locally for us. But it's what your Mark's word was when he was talking about expanding the NCAA basketball tournament. It's all about access. Like, you don't want to have to feel like you've got to have a perfect year when other people don't have to have anywhere close to a perfect year, and they get the same access, but you don't. And that's fundamentally that's a problem. But yep. You're going to deal with that at some level. So this thing is going to go to 14 or 16. I mean, you can almost rest assured that's what's going to happen. I just don't know, to your medium talk, not happy, but medium talk. Yeah. What exactly does that look like? And they may say, hey, this 4-4-2-2-1-1 model, this is what we're doing. Sorry. And it's not the worst thing. If you but that's when you get into that leads to whole separate conversations, because if you do that, sure, that's what changes these league title games now. Like, the Big 12 could say, hey, if you won the regular season and you're the top ranked team, you're exempt. So let's put the second and third place teams in the Big 12 title game as a play-in game. The SEC could say, the SEC could say, hey, let's do our first place team is exempt and our second place team is exempt. Let's have two games, and let, third play sixth and fourth play fifth, and the winners of those games. I mean, there's all different kinds of dynamics that you could get into that relate to title games that, again, potentially would mean more money, more intrigue for the sport, more inventory for the TV folks. I mean, all things are, so there's not necessarily the worst thing if you get into that deal, although more than likely you're only going to always get 2 teams. That extra at-large bid, I would think in rare cases would ever go to the ACC or the Big 12 conference. They would go to another Big 10 or an SEC team.
Sure. I think that's part of what plays into my thought with the field size. You would err more on the side of you can only put so many of these guys in there. And at the end of the day, they're the bullies on the block. So you want to be friends with them, or you want to try and wave your flag and fight against them. I'm more so interested in advancing progress in business, which means probably being friends with them. It reminds me of you hear these stories of sovereign citizens. Did you know there's a sovereign independent nation inside this backwater county in Nevada? Things like that. There's YouTube videos out there, and they're like, well, it ain't right. But I'm thinking, I don't know. The U.S. is pretty cool. I don't know. Make a few mistakes here or there, but it's not bad. So the power play is afoot, to say the least. And trying to leverage whatever you may have as far as power influence is obviously what everybody is after. All right, Chris, next time around, it's on and popping, to use an industry term. It's Texas Tech and UNCW. We'll have a pregame primer on the other side, so looking forward to it, man. Appreciate your time as always, and we'll see you for the next one.
Next time we visit, I'll talk to you from Wichita.
That's right. That's right. Safe travels, and hang around for a little bit.
I'm going to try.
Let's not make it a cup of coffee. Let's spur these boys on to maybe a game 2. We got to wash that taste out of our mouth from a year ago. Appreciate you guys for being out there. As always, thanks for the time, and thanks to the everydayers for always riding along. Shout out to the Matador Mob as well. Hit the show notes. Find a link to a free 14-day trial. That's your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text sent straight to your phone. For Chris, I'm Casey, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.